There you are. Hi, Billy. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Laz. How are you?
Excellent, sir. Good. How are you?
I'm swell. Pleasure to
Thank
be here with you today.
Likewise. Nice to have you here. All right. So what we wanted to do today was just talk more than anything on how technology can help with, investing. Right? Like, there's a ton
Mhm.
of information out there. The investing industry is like evolving, and how do people go about, like what technologies are available? How can we use it? And how do we make it work for us rather than hurt us, right? So there's a lot of different things that we can dive into. So what are some of the technologies? I mean, you are our chief technology officer, right? You've been with us, and we're always looking at different, technologies, innovations, things that we can do. What are some of the newer technology out there that can help someone when it comes to investing?
That's a great question, Laz. So I think that the first point to make is obviously that it's an enormous landscape, right? So
Yeah.
there's technology really for investors at every point in the market, whether you're a sophisticated stock market trader with a Bloomberg terminal. But of course, I think what most of the folks tuning in might be interested in are how do I get started investing and what tools are available for me to learn about investing, get started in investing. And if I have started investing as a retail investor,
Mhm.
how do I get better at it or get better returns or learn as I go? And I would say over the last couple of years, of course, that question has only become more complex as you've had new kinds of financial instruments, particularly crypto, shaking things up. So, when thinking about this landscape of which technologies are available, I think you have to ask really what part of the market you're at and
Mhm.
what you're interested in. So I think if you look at Wisest, for example, we're talking about really which tools are available for people that want to trade in traditional financial assets like stocks, bonds, ETFs, what people have traded for hundreds of years, what your parents trade, what you're supposed to trade to make sure you have a good retirement, and how you typically grow wealth in a slightly risk tolerant way without maybe venturing into more complicated instruments.
Yeah.
So basically, it's sort of the vanilla idea of how you can trade and how can we make that experience better. Because I think the key problem in that part of the market, Laz, is while there are certainly many tools available, such as free trading apps, which are abundant now, as well as even social trading apps, there's clearly a large part of the market that knows about investing apps, but doesn't feel like they are qualified or comfortable or confident, have the time
Right.
to get started using them. And so for me, there's a big opportunity uh, for someone in the technology space to provide a solution that powers greater user adoption in terms of just regular vanilla investing. And then that's sort of the first rung on the ladder, I think, to these other parts of the market.
Okay. What are some of the, to help alleviate some of the friction when it comes to starting, right? Like some of these, I know that we've had, now we can take a picture of a license, for example, or rather than having to submit an actual copy of it, or like some of these tools that help you onboard and get started rather than, having to go into a branch or see someone in person. Like, what are some of the technologies that you're seeing? And then how does it work, or how can people be safe with these technology? How can they trust it, right? Like, what are your thoughts around some of this?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that technology, frankly, is sometimes seen as something that can be challenging in terms of new user onboarding. That maybe you have to do more on your phone or fill out
Right.
more forms, more complicated forms to even get started, and that's maybe become a bit of a burden. But I think the right way to think about it is that while it maybe is in some cases more straightforward to just go down to a bank and speak to a financial planner to get started investing, first off, they're going to have you fill out lots of manual paperwork there in person. So you're really not escaping the paperwork, whether or not you're doing it on your phone or in person. But the thing to know about how these tools help in terms of security
Hmm.
is that the information that these tools have at their disposal to verify you are who you say you are, to verify that no one is going to be taking advantage of your funds or taking advantage of your identity.
Right.
They actually bring a lot more sophistication to that than a manual process does. So if you think about what a trading tool can do, like a Wealthfront or a Robinhood or Wisest, is they have more information to verify that no one is abusing your account, but they also have more information to verify that your funds do function in the market in the way that you're intending them to. There's less opportunity for human intervention, for human abuse when these tools automate trades, when these tools have checks that ensure that your funds are used in accordance with your investment profile.
So are you saying that with these new technologies, it's less likely that someone will tap into like my account and steal my information because it's not like laying around paperwork. Is it encrypted? Is it something that I can go to sleep at night
Exactly.
knowing that I do not need to worry about this type of information being misplaced by someone that, I just met and I'm trying to invest with? Is that the consensus? Is that how you would view this?
Absolutely. I couldn't have said it better myself.
Okay.
It's kind of like the way that people think about how, while it can be controversial to say that there's apps out there like Uber, which or Airbnb, which do have some horror stories for the abuse that have been experienced by some end users. The truth of the matter is if you think about the reviews and the monitoring and the tools that those apps put in your hand in terms of holding drivers accountable or holding hosts accountable, it's wildly more information than or wildly more tools you have at your disposal than you would if you were just reviewing hotels online or on a blog or reviewing riders and providing quality assurance with taxis.
Right.
So obviously the QA process for an Uber driver is much more information rich than the QA process for a taxi driver that just really has sort of a word of mouth relationship.
Right. Okay. So the technology, I guess, is more vetted, like it's under more rigorous restrictions. Is it something that, with the security, is it like an industry wide acceptance criteria, or like, if you want to have some sort of relationship with these financial institutions or, these investing platforms, they need to have some sort of security checks and balances? Is that something that will make, in your experience, is that something that should make a consumer or a user feel more comfortable?
Yeah, no doubt. And there's really never been a better time for it, Laz, because fintech is becoming a mature market now,
Yeah.
where now the crypto space, of course, is disruptive and innovative and still undergoing some sort of vetting, if you would.
Right.
But especially in traditional securities, traditional forms of investing, traditional fintech, that has been regulated for quite a while.
Okay.
There are lots of rules and regulations which define how we're supposed to operate that are looking out for the retail investors' best interest.
Okay.
And so you can sleep well at night knowing that the rules around this space have been in place for a while, and consumers are both well protected from a regulatory standpoint and also from a security standpoint.
Gotcha. So now that we know that the technology is safe and, it should be safe and it's something that, people can feel more comfortable with, there's a ton of information out there, right? Like you go to social media, you go online, there's a ton of information out there. um how do we go about, like, how do some know that, how do they know where to start when it comes to researching investing information, or where to begin? What are some of the things that you've seen, or some of the recommendations that you would have for something like that?
Yeah, it can be overwhelming when you get started.
There's a ton of it
Uh,
out there, right? Like you have any, everyone's kind of giving financial advice, and people that, you normally wouldn't hear talking about some of the stuff is saying, oh, well, I just bought XYZ, or like this one's tanking. And it's like, well, how do I know how much of this is real? Like, one go to, get their information? Where would you go?
I would think about it this way. I think that the recent trend in places like Wall Street Bets
Hmm.
has been positive in the sense that there is now an empowered community of retail investors that's making its voice heard. The key part there, though, is of course to recognize the kind of content and the kind of participants that you're seeing in those kinds of forums.
Right.
When it comes to getting started or knowing how to vet the information that you're consuming, I would think about it this way. People invest an incredible amount of time. I know I do, into a lot of the sorts of daily products they buy throughout their lives. Maybe you're thinking about buying a new car. You're thinking about maybe even just doing something like trying a new restaurant. And I think that people intuitively know how to go find information that's verifiable. You know that
True.
if you go online, and this is because the information age has taught us this, right? I
Yep.
mean, if we use something like Amazon, we know intuitively that, hey, products that have more reviews are maybe more trusted resources than products that have less reviews. Products that have more reviews that are higher rated. Products that have more reviews are higher rated and coming from an information source I already know about. I know that I can trust,
Completely agree. Yep.
right? And so I would say that people that are getting started and trying to sort through this universe of information of content, I would approach it like you approach anything else. If you see someone just making a recommendation about a stock on one of these platforms, ask yourself the same sort of checklist you would if you were buying any other kind of product, right? Is this person a verified source? Does this person have lots of sort of social proof, letting me know that other people have been able to check this out?
Right.
And is this person something? Is that someone that has a track record? So that's what I would suggest if you're an end user. Just approach it like you would buy any other product. There's no reason to get distracted or confused by maybe the jargon. We really all have a gut instinct now about how to approach products online.
That's great call out. And what you're saying is like if you know like what you're looking for, you go to those people that are reputable in that industry, like the car example, for example. The reason why I bring it up is because now like everyone on social media, you have these accounts that come up and it's like, follow me for this, and then my portfolio returned 300%, and it was like everybody sees it and it's like this huge shiny object that's like, wow, that's great, like I want to be able to do that. But then it's like, how do I know that that person is not pumping up some sort of stock or investment or something that is just to get me to buy it, when in reality it's like it's tanking, right? So to your point,
Mhm.
it's like you have to do your homework, I guess, kick the tires on it and see that this person is really who they say they are, and that it's a legitimate source and they know exactly what they're talking about, because it's everywhere. It's emails, it's social media, it's Reddit, like you have all these different sources. And like the Wall Street Bets is one that's huge, right? And that you heard the news with the AMCs and the GameStops, and it just became this phenomenon. So everyone's starting to jump on this thing, and seeing how it can work for them. But sometimes you don't know what you don't know, and you just see the end result. But like, how do I, and money and finances is something that's so intimate for people. It's You have to be able to do some of that research. And I feel like sometimes if we can educate consumers, or we can educate them on where to go, or like that trusted source, it'll just help alleviate some of that, right? Like you can be a little apprehensive on some of that, right? Like, I mean, there's so many examples of that. But so would you say, like, is there any industry standard, anything that you would say is like, yep, make sure that any credentials or anything that a consumer should be looking for when they start following somebody, or start, you know, taking some advice from them?
Yeah, of course. So I think that some of the industry credentials that we look for at Wisest, for example,
Hmm.
are we love to see something like a Series 65, a Series 66. These are some of the most preliminary tests that ensure that people that are providing financial advice have the background necessary to do so, at least at a rudimentary level.
Okay.
And those tests really ensure that you are capable of providing financial advice and functioning as a registered investment advisor. And so that's what those are: Series 65, Series 66. There are some more complex tests,
Okay.
such as the Chartered Financial Analyst test, which is sort of a three-tiered program. That's pretty rigorous. And so people that hold the CFA designation, a Chartered Financial Analyst, are also qualified to work on Wisest, and also certainly is a person that you can actually hope will know some things about providing financial advice. And then last but not least, of course, if someone has a track record that they can demonstrate in terms of a verified manner of demonstrating their returns, which is a common requirement in the industry. Can you verify
Mhm.
these returns and show that these really are how your portfolio performed? And then, of course, do you have sort of the kind of industry experience at other firms, which would indicate that you have a certain depth of knowledge or understanding, having worked in the industry for a while. So, sort of
Gotcha.
traditional markers
Right.
of experience.
Okay. I want to pause there for a moment. Someone asked us a question, and I want to make sure you can chime in, and I'll chime in, and then we can move forward. Is how much of a factor do you think portfolio exposure, so a
Mhm.
finfluencer showing the audience their portfolio, should be to a retail investor or consumer, um, for like someone to follow like on YouTube or something, right? So what's your take on that? I have my thoughts on it, but I'm curious to see what your take on that is.
Yeah, so I think the question here that's being asked by Husto
Hmm.
is how much portfolio exposure. I think he's clarifying there that he's really talking about maybe portfolio transparency.
Right. That's why. Too.
Yeah. So, what should a retail investor look for in a YouTuber to follow? I think that's a great question, Laz. Would you like to answer that first?
My no, thank you for doing that. My take on that is if it's a influencer or someone, as long as you hit it on the head when you said transparency, right? It's like show the results of not just one stock, but give me bigger sample, give me bigger data sets that I can look at and say, well, this person's track record over 3 months or 6 months is this, right? Because one investor may have a different motive than someone else, right? Like I may be investing for like long term, like I may want to put money away to send my kids to school versus somebody that's saving for like 3 months for like immediate return, something like that. So it's based on your goals, your intentions, and then based on that track record is something that I would look at. But definitely to your point, that transparency of being able to see the portfolio, right? And then the returns, the ups, the downs, the good, the bad, right? Like how has it performed over a set amount of time is something that I will likely say, yes, like I've seen it. I can do something like this. It's more credible to me, right? And then to that point, Huso just asked, if they do not show their portfolio, is it a red flag? In my opinion, yes, right? Like if you tell
Yeah.
me I've had X results, well, over what amount of time, right? Like what were the indicators that you looked for? Like what was the reasoning? Or you kind of talk me through some of that, why certain moves were made, because I don't just want somebody to do it for me. I want to learn along the way, right? Like I want to be able to understand why these things are happening, because in my opinion, money is such an intimate thing for people. Like people have a different hold and different value on it.
Mhm.
So it's like if it's something that I really want to learn and I want to know what's going on and I want to have confidence in the said advisor, I'd like to know what some of the reasoning is and make sure that we're aligned on those beliefs. It's my take on that. What's your take on it, Billy?
I think the general thrust of what you're saying is absolutely true, Laz. That it's pretty clear that if you're providing financial advice and you want to create trust and verifiability, transparency around the brand you're creating, then obviously being honest about your portfolio and providing some visibility into it is going to be key in creating trust in people that want to invest with you.
Right.
Now that being said, playing devil's advocate here, I think that someone might say, well, if I'm completely transparent about my portfolio in real time or about the trades that I'm making, that might hinder my advantage against other participants in the market because I'm being vocal about what I'm doing, and that's might make it more difficult for me to execute some kinds of trading strategies. My response to that would be you're really talking about a different kind of investing there, right? I think when you're talking about speculating in the market or doing short-term trading, that's almost a different topic than sort of long-term investing in how the market performs over the long run. I don't think I would be speaking out of turn to say that, I won't even need to speak out of turn. I'll just include a quote from someone else, which is time in the market beats timing the market. And so if you're talking about doing sort of traditional kinds of investing over the long term to generate financial well-being, you're talking about something I think that's a little bit different than trying to create a kind of hourly or daily advantage
Right.
by being clandestine about what kind of financial trades you're making. So I would say, as a general rule, if you're trying to participate in investing for the long term,
Hmm.
if you're trying to get the benefits of the market in the long term, then clearly transparency is going to be on your side. In terms of actually getting back to your question here, Husto, about how much of a red flag should it be if they don't show their returns, I would consider it again. I would draw it back to the analogy of anything else, right? Whenever a brand is unwilling to show you what's under the hood, there's a certain element where you're saying, okay, I understand that you can't show me everything right away, but obviously I want to know enough to know that I can trust you. And so that would be
To some
my,
extent,
my
once
my
you
gut
build that
instinct.
trust with that brand, it's easier for said brand to get away with certain things. And I hate to say it that way, but it's like I've already established that trust with them, right? So, in my opinion, right, and this is just something that's again is
Yeah,
subjective to and to the person. But I would say once I know this advisor, like they don't have to show me the entire book, but like whatever I am interested in, I'd like to know how it's made. I'd like to know how it works before I make some sort of buying decision, right? That's because I don't know them yet. But like if I bought my car from, you know, Honda, for example, for years, I don't need to look at the specs of everything and the miles per gallon or anything. I already know what I have because I've done business with this company for such amount of time. So that would be my take on it. And that actually leads me to what I wanted to ask you as well was
mhm,
um, the market, right? Like everyone's with investing and they want to know what's going on. What are these fractional shares that I keep hearing about? Like, how does it work? Kind of show us what it takes to do that. Like, what is that?
yeah. Well, I think that can actually be tied into the last topic we were just discussing, Laz, when it comes to transparency of a portfolio here. And so, first off, I want to thank Husto for bringing that question to our attention and
Yeah.
spotlight him for doing that. So I appreciate the opportunity to answer that. And in terms of the way we do things at Wisest, for example, with that portfolio transparency, to your point, Laz, we begin by asking experts to show you everything
Right.
that's in their portfolio on the platform. So before you make that decision to buy, you know all the ingredients, just like you would read it on a box at the grocery store.
Right.
Uh, and then from there, you have the opportunity to have those experts rebalance that portfolio you've invested in. And when you've invested with them, invested in their model, while you see that initial recipe of what you're getting in terms of the portfolio, then you can follow their guidance in terms of automating their trades moving forward. You've decided that you're willing to invest in them, you believe in their brand and what's in their portfolio to begin with. And then as they update it moving forward, you have the comfort and knowledge that those trades are going to be automatic on your behalf.
Okay.
So, in terms of how that works with fractional shares, it's key to that strategy. And it's also somewhat key to transparency. So, what are these fractional shares you've been hearing about? Well, in the past, one of the frustrations of using these trading apps was while you could open a new brokerage account with maybe only $5 or $10, something they frequently use to recruit new customers and sort of brag about the low cost of their platform.
Right.
You would do this and then realize, okay, well, now that I've opened an account, I want to buy a share of Facebook or a share of AT&T. And you would realize that while you only needed $5 to open the account, some of these shares that are popular, like Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway, are quite expensive to buy even a single share. So
Right.
it used to be the case that to use these products, you had to buy stocks in the market with the lowest sort of atomic unit being an individual share. And so you had to have enough funds to buy an individual share. And there were a lot of companies that people were interested in, like Tesla, where
Hmm.
those shares had gotten quite valuable. And it was precisely a function of their popularity that those shares started becoming inaccessible to people that were interested in only investing small amounts or having a very distributed portfolio, diversified portfolio.
Right.
So what fractional shares are, they've created a bit of a revolution where a fractional share allows you to do exactly what it sounds like. There's now tools out there in technology, often powered by custodian broker dealers, which are a back end provider of financial technology in the market that allow you to execute trades now where you actually only have to buy the exact amount of a stock that you're interested in. So you're no longer tethered to the actual stock price when you have fractional shares. It allows you to buy just a piece of that pie. So if
Yeah.
Tesla is selling pies and each individual share is a single pie, you can now buy a slice of that pie. Whereas before you had to buy the whole pie.
So now, to the pie analogy, I can buy a variety pack. So I can get a slice of Apple, I can get a slice of
Exactly.
Tesla, I can get a slice of something, and then have a portfolio that I never thought in my life I can have, because I would have to have bought one of each, versus now I can take a slice, however big I want it, and then have different options in my portfolio. Is that right?
I couldn't have said it better myself.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure and that's something that's like, a trendy buzzword lately, like fractionals. And then it's different from stock splits, right? Or like you take a stock and it's basically saying we're going to divide it into three. We're just basically saying that you can now buy, for $10, you can buy X amount of a stock, versus having to spend $1,000 or whatever it is on one said full option for, as you were saying before.
Yeah, stock split in the past was one way that companies tried to handle this, but then you had to rely on companies performing stock splits often enough that the shares would still be affordable to you. Fractional shares eliminate that problem entirely. You no longer have to wait on some board of directors to vote on what may be a tricky stock split. So now most of us have the power to buy these slices of pie as small as we'd like them.
Okay. We have a couple minutes left, Billy. I wanted to ask one thing, how do I make sure that technology works for me, not against me, right? Like sometimes
Mhm.
I feel that as a user, technology can, I can be my own worst enemy. What I mean by that is like it's so easy now
Mhm.
to open accounts and fund things and buy things, right? Like what can I do, or how can technology help me protect me against myself, right? Like, does that make sense? Like how can we use this?
Absolutely. So I think that begins, Laz, with an incentive problem, right? So many apps today, really most apps are built with user engagement in mind, and sometimes that has inadvertently led to really ending up being user anxiety in
Yes.
mind,
I have
right?
a few examples in mind as you say that,
Yeah.
and unintended consequences, and that's what I think a lot of people are afraid of, right? Like, it's so easy now to do certain things. Like, how do I stop myself from those unintended consequences?
Right. So I think like I was saying, it does come down to incentives, right? I think so many of these companies that built apps like this uh, began with the best of intentions,
Correct.
right? Um, whether it was bringing people together or making things cheaper on the end user in terms of executing trades. But somewhere something goes wrong with the incentive structure of the company, and they end up getting incentivized to try and motivate you to use their product all the time, as much as they possibly can, regardless of whether or not it's good or bad for you. Or they end up finding ways to make you the product rather than the customer, where they're selling your information in some way that is against your interests. So what we did at Wizest to escape this problem, for example, is we created an incentive structure where the experts on the platform are not compensated based on how much you trade. They're not going to be paid more if you're investing in their portfolios more or less often, or if they're trading more or less often. They're not going to be paid based on selling information about what kinds of trades you're making. They are only going to be compensated based on user satisfaction, how happy you are with their portfolio, and whether or not they have a reasonable amount of risk associated with their portfolio in alignment with sort of the risk of their end user, their client. So, are they keeping your risk profile in mind, and are they responding to user satisfaction ratings, user reviews? And so, we literally compensate experts based on those two factors. It's literally a coefficient that we multiply to the way they're compensated. It's not just sort of something we recommend, like you should have 5 stars as an Uber driver. No, we will actually compensate you differently based on how many stars your end users give you. And so that creates a real difference in incentives, which is different from some of these other products.
So if I wanted to like YOLO black and red, for example, I shouldn't be doing that on Wizest. It's not the platform.
Probably not. Yeah, probably not.
Okay. Okay.
We're going to be looking out for your best interest.
Okay. So I guess what you're saying, from what I'm hearing is, advisors are compensated based on the risk profiling, right? And then as I am joining the platform or as I'm onboarding, you are going to assess my risk tolerance and then share portfolios that are catered to my risk tolerance, rather than me open field, open season, pick this because my plumber told me to pick this stock, right? And then they pick the other one. So it's almost like there's guardrails in place to protect me from myself. Is that fair?
That's exactly right. Yeah. So the key idea there is we're going to recommend products which are in alignment with your values,
Okay.
in alignment with your investment goals, and we're not going to be trying to engage you in a way that motivates risky trading behavior.
Gotcha. Billy, this was great, man. It's always good doing this with you. I always feel like we don't do this enough, right? I'd like to get more of these sessions as we go on. Any final thoughts? Any takeaways that you want to just share before we sign off?
The last thing I'd say is that I think there has been some trepidation about fintech going forward, given the fact that we're facing a complicated market.
Mm-hmm.
And the truth is that there are tools out there. You have to look for them, but there are tools out there that make navigating bad markets easier. Rather than these tools you were mentioning, Laz, where they're maybe motivating you to act on impulses that you might be having when you're reading these headlines. I would encourage everyone to be looking for tools that help them navigate choppy waters rather than make them gamble. So those are my takeaways for these coming months.
Couldn't have said it better. I would just say, to just, right on that one is do your homework, right? Like see what other people are saying, test a little bit before you go all in, right? Like maybe bring in a small sample, see how comfortable you are, get comfortable with not just our platform, but any platform, right? Like get comfortable with it, understand how it works. Can you pull out? Can you, add if you wanted to? And then once you're comfortable, like, ease into it more and more, right? But it's got gaining that trust, understanding who you're working with on the other side of that, app or table, right? For lack of a better term, and just have established that and then, move forward. It's not like a one-time thing. There's opportunities to, invest. Like you said, it's time in the market. So that would be my take on that. So
our motto at Wizest is invest with people you trust.
Exactly. Sir, this was great. Thanks again for making time for this. I know we've got a lot going on, but as always, man, like your insight's been helpful, and I hope everyone got to enjoy this.
It's been a pleasure, Laz. Thank you for everyone that tuned in. Husto, thanks again for that question, and
Yes,
look
sir.
forward
Thank
to
you.
having more of these conversations later.
All right. Thank you. Have a good one.
Cheers.
Bye. Bye.